my name is Dorian and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today's video is going to be the first in a series that I have titled Media Munchies, and basically what it is it's going to be me going through all the different types of media that I have consumed over the course of a month, and what I do is I talk a little bit about them without giving away any spoilers, and then I rate them on a 5-star rating scale. So without further ado, let's get into the Media Munchies for January of 2021. The first book that I read this month was Incendiary by Zoraida Cordova. This book was Zoraida's young adult debut novel. This book follows a girl named Renata who, among others, has special abilities and is being hunted by the kingdom that has taken over hers as well as others. In it, she is a rebel who infiltrates the palace and conducts a mission to find the mysterious weapon that has been found to take her people's powers away from them. So, for a debut novel, I found Incendiary to be relatively good. I definitely know that Zoraida's work will just continue to grow as she continues to write and publish. So although her transitions were a little bit rocky and there were a couple things here and there that didn't really click as well, her book was still very well written and it was still a great debut, and I would definitely recommend it to anybody who likes to read fantasy novels. And on the star scale, I went ahead and I gave this book 3. The first TV show that I watched this year was Bridgerton, which is on Netflix, and I loved this show so much, but it was definitely much more romantic and a little bit fantastical than it was historic. I watched a video about the things that the show did historically accurate and the things that they didn't, and basically the much minor details were what were more accurate than the actual story itself, but otherwise it was still very enjoyable, and the little mystery aspect of it was very enjoyable. It's definitely a fantastical version of Regency England, and I know I read that somewhere else where they stated the same thing. It's a fantastical version of what England was like during that time period. I definitely enjoyed the different occupations as well as the different races that were represented in the TV show. I will say the intimate scenes in this show were a little bit over the top, and that has to do with the number of them and also the content within them. It was just a little bit too much for my liking, and it was definitely a little awkward as well to watch. I also just want to point out that I watched this show with my sister and we called who Lady Whistledown was like 3 episodes in, so I just wanted to point that out because I was very proud and she was very proud when we got to the last episode and it was revealed that who we thought Lady Whistledown was Lady Whistledown. Out of 5 stars, I went ahead and I gave the first season of Bridgerton 4. The first movie that I watched this month was when I had my wisdom teeth pulled out, and that was Ocean's 8, and I liked the all-female aspect of this movie. However, I will say that the scene sequences were a little choppy, and the overall storyline was kind of up and down throughout the whole thing. So at some points in time, it was a little more difficult to follow than others, but overall, I enjoyed the storyline and the characters. I thought the cast was pretty good, and out of 5 stars, I went ahead and I gave Ocean's 8 3. The next book that I read, that's backwards. The next book that I read is Crescent City by Sarah J. Maas. I kind of screwed myself over when I read this book, and I'll go ahead and tell you what I did. So I went on to Goodreads, and I started reading some reviews when I was like maybe a third of the way through the book. I didn't read any spoilers, luckily, but I saw really mixed reviews about people who really liked it and thought it was the best fantasy book they've read in a really long time, and then there were people who absolutely hated it and destroyed it in their reviews. Now, don't get me wrong, I did like the book. I liked it. It was pretty good. But I have to admit that the people who didn't like it were justified for the most part in why they didn't like it. And after reading their reviews, unfortunately, it sort of tainted my image of the book because I started thinking to myself, oh, they're right, this makes sense, like this is happening too much, like that's really lame, blah blah blah, but I still enjoyed it. I thought that Sarah J. Maas could have done a better job of her world building. To me, it just seemed that she would be really in deep with a scene that was going on with the characters, and then it'd be like, oh, this character was walking somewhere, let me throw in a page and a half of world building that no one's gonna remember. And if I'm being honest, I still don't remember half of the world building that she did in that book, which is really sad because her world is so expansive that it's hard to keep track of everything, it's hard to remember everything, and I feel like the world building is key, but it just wasn't done very well. And I felt that her transitions between world building scenes and regular scenes weren't the best. Also, I just want to say this book is 800 pages. Okay, it could have been 400. Maybe 500. And unfortunately, one of the reviews I read was like, the book doesn't get good until the last like 200 pages. But then the first 600 are totally worth it. And I was like, are you serious? And then it happened. And I was like, I mean, I guess that's true. It was worth it to read the first 600 pages to get to the good stuff, but still. So Crescent City follows a half fae, half mortal named Bryce who lives in this really big city where there's all types of fantastical creatures like angels and pixies and mermaids, mermen, all that jazz. Basically what Crescent City is a huge murder mystery that turns into a scheme for world domination. And I did like the murder mystery. I did like the world domination scheme. Overall though, it definitely isn't her best book. And I really don't think I'm going to be continuing with this series, unfortunately. Out of 5 stars, I gave Crescent City 3 because I found myself really stuck in the middle of liking and disliking it. The next show that I watched this month was the first season of Cobra Kai, which is on Netflix. And let me just say that this had to be one of the worst TV shows I've ever watched in my entire life. Hear me out, please. I heard a lot of good things about it going in. Everyone was raving about it. People said they loved it. It was great. It was action-packed. It was like very nostalgic for people like me who grew up watching The Karate Kid and all that jazz. But honestly, it was like a bad teen drama slash action slash adult show slash a huge mashup of things that didn't make sense. And what I found out of all of it was that it depicted immature behavior among adults that would never pass in the real world, especially in the workforce. The things that happen in this show were really unrealistic in my opinion, and overall I just didn't enjoy it. Not to mention that it normalizes name-calling, bullying, put-downs, and just ridiculous behavior that is so unacceptable in this day and age. Something else that I found was that this show was too juvenile for anyone above the ages of 16 and 18, but then it was also too adult for anybody below the age of 16 to 14. So I don't really know what the target audience here was. All I know is that it did not meet my expectations, and I don't really understand why people like it. If someone wants to explain to me why they do, please go ahead and do so. I'm not trying to dissuade anyone from watching this show. I'm just trying to give my opinion, which was I didn't like that. And unfortunately, that's why I gave it only 2.5 out of 5 stars. The next movie that I watched this month was Instant Family, and this movie was so good because it was both comedic but also dramatic, and it really put into perspective for me something that I had never thought about before, which was foster families. And I thought that the story was written really well, and I liked the cast, I liked the characters, I liked the overall themes that encompassed the film. And honestly, I would just recommend it if you're sitting at home one night and need something new to watch that has never really been done before. I went ahead and I gave Instant Family 5 stars. I listened to my first podcast entirely for the first time this month, and that was Cypher. And all I knew going in was that it was about a young girl who cracks a cipher that was posted anonymously on the web that's really difficult. And after that, I had no idea what it was about. But let me tell you, this podcast took me on a roller coaster. And although it was a little bit out there, it was still done so well that the quality of the podcast definitely made up for the story. And I'm not saying the story was bad, it was really good, but some of the parts were a little, unrealistic, but I think that might have just been because it's sci-fi and it's something that's kind of out of my comfort zone that I've never really delved into before. I've also never listened to a podcast like this before. I only listened to Crime Junkie and Potterless, and I think that's it. So overall, this was really enjoyable for me, and I went ahead and I gave Cypher 5 stars. Please go listen to it. If you're just cleaning and need something to listen to in the background, or if you have nothing else to do, you might as well give it a shot. It was very, very good. It was a great BBC Sounds production. The next movie I watched was Annabelle Creation. Holy shite. This movie was the scariest movie I have ever seen in my life. There was so much going on, so many different characters to keep track of. It was insane, and it kept you on the edge of your seat the entire time from start to finish. This was the first Annabelle movie I had ever watched. I haven't seen the first Annabelle or Annabelle Comes Home, but I definitely want to watch those after seeing Annabelle Creation. And then the only other 2 movies I've seen from the Conjuring universe were the first two Conjurings, but I'm very excited for the third, and I definitely want to watch The Nun and any others that they've come out with that I might not know about. I cannot tell you the number of times that I screamed while watching this film. I'm just saying. I went ahead and I gave 5 stars to Annabelle Creation because it scared me to death. Another movie I watched this month was Emma, and if I'm being honest, every single character in this film creeped me out. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was like the makeup or just the people in general, but they just were very strange looking to me and they kind of freaked me out a little bit. But overall, it was a good story. It was a good screenplay. Some of the scene editing was a little choppy to me and kind of confusing, but I did enjoy the overall story arc with Emma and Mr. Knightley, and I will say that it was a good production. I thought they picked a very good cast for this production, despite them being a little bit creepy to me, just the way they were depicted on screen. I don't know if they really look like that in real life, but I'm just saying that was the one thing that really kind of put me off the most. Going into the film, I wasn't really sure what to expect because I haven't really seen anything like it, but I came away satisfied with the story and I came away satisfied with how it ended. I also will say that I found the cinematography a little odd, but I thought it was also creative. So I went ahead and I gave Emma 3.5 out of 5 stars. The last Media Munchie that I have for the month of January is the last movie that I watched, which was White Tiger, which is a Netflix original film, and it was done very well. It was a little slow, but it also took on a topic that I don't know if many people, at least in the US or in other parts of the world, know about in India. This was a film that was different from anything I've ever seen before, but the content of it and the story was also something that I had never seen before, and it really opened my eyes up to the differences throughout the world of how people are treated, how different cultures are, and how different societies really are in comparison to my own, which is something that I want to continue opening my eyes to and kind of discovering is different cultures, different societies, and really understanding the differences throughout the world that make up all of these different people that we aren't really in tune to. Sorry for going off on a rant. The one thing I wish this film had kind of delved a little deeper into was after the fact of the main character telling his story. So basically in White Tiger, we have a character who starts off in his own business in his office and he's watching the news, and it's about the Chinese Prime Minister who's coming to visit India, and he wants to tell him his story via email. So basically, as he's writing this email, he's telling his story and the film goes through his story. But one thing that I wish they had gone into more was after he had finished his email, after he had finished telling his story, what happens? Because there's stuff that happens in it that he could get in trouble for, and I wanted to see how the Chinese official responded to him, what he did after he read his story. And honestly, I don't even know if the main character sent him his story. I think there's one scene where he approaches the Chinese executive once he gets out of his car and he's like, hey, it's me from the email. So we don't even know if his email was read. We don't really know what's going to happen to him after the fact. Does he just continue living his life? That's one thing that I wish they had gone more in depth with. Otherwise, I thought it was great, so I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Alright everyone, so those are the 10 pieces of media that I consumed for the month of January, and I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I hope that you enjoyed the series that I have started titled Media Munchies. So if you want to go ahead and stick a thumbs up on this video and subscribe, that would be greatly appreciated. And also, if you have read, seen, or heard any of the stories that I mentioned, if you want to comment down below which one was your favorite, which one was your least favorite, or any sort of ideas that you had that I didn't cover, or opinions that you had that I didn't cover, go ahead and do that. And aside from that, I will see you next time.